Great, thank you. Well, again, I'd like to formally welcome everyone and thank you for joining our webinar today. So we'll be speaking about the ACT School Bus Fleet Deployment Program, which is an electric school bus funding and technical assistance program offered through the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. So to go over just a brief agenda for today's meeting, I'll quickly introduce myself, then my colleague Leah is on the line. Give a brief overview of the programs offered under ACT School Bus, so both the deployment program and a little bit about another program we're offering. We'll spend a decent amount of time going over eligibility and prioritization, and have a few slides that will walk through the application materials that you can find in the application itself, the selection criteria, review our timeline, and then as I mentioned at the beginning, we want to leave lots of time for questions and answers, so feel free to put them in the chat throughout, and we will monitor the chat box and we'll answer them at the end. So just briefly, I'm sure many of you on this call are familiar with MassEC, but for those of you who are not, we are a state economic development agency with the overarching goal of accelerating the clean energy transition in the Commonwealth. So we have multiple focus areas at MassEC. I sit within the clean transportation team, but we also have the grid modernization team, offshore wind. We do workforce development and training, technology development. I'm sure I'm missing some, but a myriad of things. It's very exciting, cool. So again, I'm from the clean transportation team, and that's where all of our school bus programming comes out. So just a little bit of background on the program that we're speaking about today, the Accelerating Clean Transportation School Bus Program, or ACT School Bus. Well, I should introduce myself. I'm Orla Strobel. I'm a program coordinator on our team, and I'm joined by Nalia Yefet, who's one of my colleagues, who's helping with the webinar today. So thank you, Nalia. And back to the ACT School Bus Program. The ACT School Bus Program was essentially developed for a combination of reasons, but in 2020, MassEC assisted with 3 pilot electric school bus projects across Massachusetts with 3 separate school districts. Those were slightly smaller scale projects, and we saw basically from that electric school bus projects are very costly and they're also technically complex. And so even if you're a well-resourced district or have a lot of expertise in this area, it's just still a new area for everyone. So in 2022, when EPA came out with the Clean School Bus Program, the federal funding program for school bus electrification, MassEC saw it as an opportunity to really step in and provide additional funding and technical assistance to ensure that those school bus projects that were funded in Massachusetts could really succeed and carry out, again, the successful deployments. So in addition to wanting to make sure that the clean school bus projects took off, everything we do at MassEC is really through the lens of wanting to make sure that our projects are scalable and replicable and can be lessons learned that can then be used across the state. So we did want to kind of have a conglomeration of projects that would demonstrate effective program delivery, have good community partnerships, showcase different implementation models, and then represent where Massachusetts school districts are all at various stages of the electrification process. So anywhere from the early planning stage to school bus deployment. So briefly, as I said, this webinar is really to review the ACT School Bus Deployment Program, but I did want to touch on our advisory services program. So ACT School Bus is an umbrella program, and there are 2 sub-programs under ACT School Bus, the advisory services program and the deployment program. And we more or less see these programs as a phase 1, phase 2. So advisory services is really aimed at school districts that are very much in the planning phase. Maybe they have deployed some buses, maybe not, but really trying to plan larger scale what the future of their fleet looks like going fully electric. So this is not a formal grant program, but each enrolled school district gets a customized fleet electrification plan and hands-on technical assistance from a team of experts. So MassEC has hired a consultant team that is headed by EIC, so they're the primary consultant, and they're developing feasibility designs, financial models, procurement plans for all the enrolled districts. And so currently we have about 4 districts or 5 districts enrolled. We have 17 slots remaining. The reason for this is that some of the larger school districts in Massachusetts have multiple depots for their buses. And so that means that that's, again, sort of a whole other plan for our team to create. So any public school district in Massachusetts that services K through 12 education is eligible to apply for the advisory services program. And I use apply rather loosely. It's not really a formal application. Rather, we recommend that you reach out to us, let us know your interest. We set up an initial meeting, learn about your fleet, see how it compares to other fleets in the program, see if it helps to kind of mirror our hopes for geographic and ownership model diversity in the state, and some of your own electrification and clean energy goals. So we are continuing to enroll, and at the very end I have a contact slide which will provide information on who you can contact for the advisory services program. But yeah, we really recommend if you're not really sure where to get started or have gotten started but want more information, this is really a great place to start. And I do want to flag that being a part of the advisory services program does not preclude you from applying to the deployment program. So you could be an advisory service participant and apply to this round or a future round of deployment. So as I said, it is sort of a phase 1 and phase 2, but we see that it can be helpful to begin both at once. And then what we're here to talk about today is our deployment program, which is a formal grant opportunity. So the deployment program offers flexible funding and technical assistance to school districts in Massachusetts. So we currently have a cohort of deployment grantees who received the 2022 Clean School Bus rebates. So we were able to support every school district in Massachusetts that received a Clean School Bus rebate, and one school district in Massachusetts that received another federal funding source for electric school buses. So under this program, we're partnered with ERG, Eastern Research Group, as the head consultant, and they have a few subcontractors who are working on this project as well. And so we have decided, because EPA came out with the Clean School Bus grant opportunity that closed in August, that we really wanted to, again, partner with ERG and to make sure that there are successful deployment projects from that grant. So this ACT School Bus Fleet Deployment Funding Opportunity is intended to complement school districts that receive the EPA Clean School Bus 2023 grant, or school districts that have identified another federal or state funding source. So the way we see school bus deployment funding from MassEC is that it's really intended to complement another funding source. It's not particularly seen as standalone funding. We really encourage school districts that have, again, either applied to the EPA Clean School Bus grant, another federal funding source, or have identified substantial funding elsewhere, would be really good applicants for this program. So in this round of deployment funding, we can offer up to $2.5 million in flexible funding per award, and we expect that we'll award anywhere between 1 and 3 school districts. That's partially dependent on how many school districts in the region receive Clean School Bus grants from the last grant round of EPA, and again, dependent on the cohort that we get. So the main goal of this program is really to electrify at least a portion of your fleet by the end of the ACT School Bus program. We see this as a great time to continue your planning, see what procurement options make sense moving forward, but really the goal is to make sure that those buses that you've identified in your application, you have those electric buses successfully deployed by the end of the program. And as I mentioned, we are offering technical assistance through this program. Again, the lead consultant on that is ERG, and the technical consultant team can really help you either depending on where you're at in the stage with some procurement support, but specifically infrastructure build out, charging station planning, data collection, looking into things like depot upgrades, what kind of construction you might need, or what kind of communication with the utilities that you might need. And through this grant, just to kind of clarify what are eligible costs, we namely see this as being, as I said, flexible funding, but particularly MassEC can help support the cost of electric school buses, chargers, depot upgrades, staff time, any construction installation costs. So that's kind of the gist of this program. And there's a link here, which again, these slides will be posted on our website, and we can also stick this in the chat before the end of our meeting today, the link to the request for the proposal for this program. So the request for proposal opened November, and it's closing on January 11th, 2024. So we do encourage you to get started to look at that proposal now if you haven't already. If you have submitted a Clean School Bus application under the 2023 grant, this application is intended to more or less mirror the type of information that application asks for. So most everything that you submitted under that grant, you can in some form kind of provide to us, and that's really what we're looking at. And just again to go over eligibility and prioritization for the deployment program, a lead applicant can be any public school district in Massachusetts with an NCES district ID or a private transportation provider that is applying on behalf of an identified Massachusetts public school district. So for instance, if you are a public school district and you want to apply on your own, you can do that, and you can partner with a third party, but decide that the way you want to submit your application is for you to be the primary applicant, and we would contract with you. The grants would flow through you, and then you would decide how that funding works out on the back end. On the other hand, if you wanted to partner with a private transportation provider and have them be the direct applicant, that's totally fine as well. So this is a change from our last round. And the private transportation provider could be the direct grantee with us. The funds would flow through them, and then kind of works out with the school district behind the scenes. Again, eligible applicants, any public school district in Massachusetts, but EPA priority school districts will be given preference. And again, we do have this overarching goal of geographic and ownership model diversity, but really focused on supporting clean school bus grantees. So I just wanted to quickly walk through the application materials. These are all available in the RFP itself on our website. And Malia, maybe if you have a chance, you can share that link in the chat to our RFP. But I wanted to just kind of walk through all of the attachments, and then again, happy to answer any questions at the end. So attachment A in the application is purely informational. It's just a list of clean school bus priority districts so that you can see whether your district is prioritized based on EPA definition. The second attachment, attachment B, is an authorized signature and acceptance form, basically confirming that you have read the application, you understand what we're asking for, you've read the sample grant agreement, and you have like a good understanding of what this program is. Attachment C is really the bulk of the application, and again, there will be a slide that kind of breaks out what that looks like. For attachment C, we do have help available from our technical consultant team, and it's down below. If you're looking for support specifically on the application, you can reach out to Jonathan Ells, who's the lead project manager for our project, and he can help with most things related to the sort of technical aspects of the application. And if you have more just general program related questions, you can always reach out to the Clean Transportation team shared inbox, and they'll be monitoring this. So regarding the application form, this is going to be basically the list of questions that we're requesting for you to either provide us information or answer. And again, I'll walk through what that looks like, but it's mostly high-level information about your fleet makeup, what buses you're going to be transitioning. We ask you to have, similar to, again, if you've completed the EPA Clean School Bus application, that fleet sheet where you say these are the buses that you are going to be replacing and your chargers that you'll be replacing. And then we have sort of a number of questions about your goals and how you see this project flowing for you. And then attachment D is the proposed budget. So we also have help available from ERG for this. And the proposed budget is really for you to break out for us what you expect to use the Mass DC funding for, EPA funding or other funding sources, and any cost share that the school district or third party might be providing to the project directly. So the proposed budgets don't need to be finalized. It's not set in stone, but it is based on where you're at now, what you see this project looking like for you. So again, help available with the budget through the technical consulting team, and you can always reach out to Mass DC if you have specific questions on that as well. Attachment E is the proposed site plan, and I do want to emphasize that we are not expecting professional level site plans in the application. We just want a general sense of where is your proposed site. If you have an aerial view or shot or just a very basic drawing, we just want to get a sense of what that looks like. If you have multiple depot locations, and you're going to be hopefully getting electric buses for multiple of those locations, just providing that information. The technical consultant team can also walk you through that, but again, please provide what you have. We're not expecting any sort of professional level or engineer drawings. And then attachment F is the sample grant agreement. So this is pulled sort of as a template from our current projects. And I do want to note that the sample grant agreement Obviously, if you're applying or selected, there would be, a whole process for us to discuss what makes sense based on your project, but this is what we see as kind of the overarching, these are expectations from our grantees. It's all things that you probably are looking at anyway for part of this project, and more or less it's a checklist of items that we need to be complete under this project. So again, just to reiterate, if you're looking for technical support, you can reach out to Jonathan Els at erg.com. If you're looking for more program-related questions, please just reach out to Clean Transportation shared inbox, and we'll be happy to monitor those questions. So again, these are all linked when the slides are posted. You'll see this on the RFP as well, but we have the application out now. Again, it will be due January 11th, 2024 at 4 p.m. And then a couple other timeline and logistics that I wanted to flag. We will be posting a formal questions and answers document to our site. So any questions you ask in the chat box, we can include those. It's going to be anonymous, so won't say who it's from. But questions that will be publicly available, similar to how EPA does for their ongoing Q&A document, just so you can reference if you have a question, someone else may have already asked it. So those will be available on our site on December 11th, I believe. So questions are due to us on December 4th if you want them to be formally included on the site, and then we'll answer those within the week and have that posted. You're welcome to answer questions after December 4th, but again, that's the formal deadline if you want your question to be reflected on our site. And then we anticipate notification of awards somewhere between February and March 2024, somewhat dependent on, EPA timelines and somewhat dependent on how many applications we receive, but we aim between a month and 2 months after the deadline that we will have the notification of award. And then apologies, this is a little bit blurry when it's up close, but I wanted to just screenshot and showcase the priority applicants under the Clean School Bus Grant, so that, again, this is the exact same list of school districts that are prioritized under the ACT School Bus Grant. Again, if you're not a priority district, you are still eligible to apply if you are a public school district in Massachusetts. These are just districts that are being prioritized under Clean School Bus and therefore under ACT School Bus. So you can take a minute to read this. This is available on the Mass EC site. Under our RFP, it's available on the EPA Clean School Bus site. And hopefully you glance and see if your district's involved in here. And if you have questions on whether or not your district would be considered priority or higher priority, again, more than happy to talk through that. So I wanted to screenshot just one example question from the application itself to give you a sense of what kinds of questions we're asking. Again, we really suggest for some of these questions that you work with the technical consultant team. They're there to be a resource for you. It's really helpful for you to also be able to kind of connect with them early, get a sense of what kind of support they can offer for them to understand your project better. So it's really mutually beneficial. But again, this is just one example question from the application to kind of give you a sense of what kinds of questions we're asking. And then as I've highlighted, it's really intended to be in line with Clean School Bus. So the question says, to ensure electric buses are deployed within the time frame of ACT School Bus and EPA Clean School Bus, school districts will be required to create, submit, and follow a work plan and project timeline. So, under here, we've highlighted if you have applied to EPA Clean School Bus, you can essentially submit the work plan that you submitted to EPA. We're really interested in seeing what your project work plan looks like when it's fully put together. If you have not applied for the EPA Clean School Bus program, again, you're still eligible to apply for this program opportunity, and we've outlined the sort of points that we need to make sure are included in that work plan. And essentially the work plan is a number of key milestones that we want to see your timeline and how you propose to meet them. I also wanted to showcase the sample budget. So this is an example, obviously not from a real grant or anything, but this is just one that we filled in to showcase the types of materials that you could request under the budget, what a total budget would look like. So as you can see, and apologies if it's a little bit blurry, but we have here for the proposed project funding sources, the ACT School Bus grant funding, the EPA Clean School Bus Grant funding, any school district contribution, and then utility contribution. Again, all those examples. And the budget's broken out into subsections of direct labor, of subcontractor costs, and then direct materials and other costs. So that's how we break out the project. We just want to see your funding sources for everything. And again, you can request up to $2.5 million from FCEC. So this example budget is not only in this slideshow, but also as an instructional page in the budget template itself, which is posted to our site. So this is all available. If you have questions on the budget, we are more than happy to answer them. But we do ask that you use this template just so we have a standard idea of what every applicant's budget looks like. And then I've just given kind of an up-close screenshot of the direct materials and other cost sections, and you can see how you might break out something like this. So as an example, I know under the grant, most apply between minimum 25, 50 buses. But again, just showing that you could request, this is the amount you expect to receive or have received from EPA. You need additional funding from FCC to support the total cost. Same for the chargers. Maybe you want additional chargers, and FCC can support that. Maybe the school district supports that as well. And then just some examples of other items that maybe you want FCC to cover. So there is a whole allowable expenses section in the RFP that you can review. But just wanted to highlight what something might look like for your school district. Similarly, I wanted to highlight some commonly asked questions that we've been getting just since the RFP opened in November. And a very big question we've been getting is whether or not you can stack ACT school bus funding with EPA Clean School Bus funding and other federal funding in general. So the answer to that is yes, absolutely. Our program is really intended to be stacked with federal funding. Again, we see this as add-on funding. So yes, it can be stacked with Clean School Bus, it can be stacked with DERA. From FCC's perspective, it can be stacked with other state funding, so there are no restrictions on our end. Sometimes other organizations or agencies have restrictions on their end for stacking, and if you have questions on that, we're more than happy to look through that with you. We really want to make this simple for you, and any stacking questions are things that we should be able to figure out with you on the back end. But yes, absolutely stackable with federal funding. Another question we've been getting is the function of school buses. So basically we've had a few questions about what if you have school buses that you primarily use for transportation to and from school, but then you also use those same buses for athletic events or other extracurricular activities. So the answer is you can certainly receive funding for what we call multifunctional school buses, but the buses must serve traditional school routes as well. So you couldn't, ask for funding for a bus that is purely for athletic trips, but it can be used for more than one purpose. And then the last question that's pretty common that we've been getting that I wanted to point out are eligible replacement bus types. So any type A, C, D electric school bus, any of your typical electric school buses, you can replace a diesel or gas bus with electric buses under this program. And then we've had a few questions about type D vans. So you can use ACT school bus funding to purchase or replace diesel vans or again gas vans with electric, but you would need to also be electrifying school or purchasing electric school buses. So your project couldn't just be vans, but if you are doing buses, you can add vans on as well. So that's really all for the formal agenda. Again, I really want to highlight, please submit any questions to us. If you want them posted on the site, please submit by December 4th. For technical questions, you can reach out to Jonathan Ells at erg.com. And as I mentioned before on the advisory services slide, if you're interested in the advisory services program, please reach out to our VIC team. So Alex Klein is our lead coordinator on the recruitment for that project, so you can reach them at apine@vic.org. Some of you may be familiar with Power Options. They're a subcontractor on that program, so if you are familiar with Power Options, have connections to them, I know they work with a lot of school districts, you're more than welcome to reach out to the Power Options contact if that's a streamline you're more familiar with. And then I did just want to point out again, so there is the RFP available on our website. You can also contact me directly if you have questions. I, for the most part, monitor the Clean Transportation inbox, but you can also, again, reach out to me directly with questions. I'll probably get to that a little sooner. And you can sign up for office hours. So we do hold office hours. So if you have questions and just want some, FaceTime with us, we're more than happy to meet with you. And if none of the office hour time works, just reach out to me and we'll find another time that works. So again, that's pretty much what I have. And now I would like to open it up for questions. So the way I'll turn it to you, maybe I don't know how many questions you've gotten, but if you want to comment in the chat box.
Yeah, so we have one question in. What kind of time frame is there to bring buses online? And then kind of what is the minimum number of electric buses, and kind of does that time frame differ? Do you just need one bus online, or does that have to be every single bus online? What does that time frame look like?
Thank you. Yeah. So in terms of the minimum bus requirement, there is no minimum bus requirement for the Mass CEC grant for X school bus. So you could decide that you just want to transition one bus that would be eligible under our program. That said, as I mentioned, we're really intending to complement federal funding. So for the EPA Clean School Bus grants, there are minimum requirements, either 25 buses if you're applying as a school district is the minimum, or 50 if you've applied as a third party. So I would recommend reviewing the Clean School Bus requirements, although you would have already submitted that application if you're in that position. So I would say for after school bus, no minimum. And if you've applied for other funding, you don't even need to use their funding for the cost of the bus. So if you have identified other funding to transition your buses and you're just looking for gap funding for chargers or infrastructure of other sorts, we can use that as well. And then in terms of the timeline, so again, it depends if you're working on a federal timeline, so Clean School Bus, DERA, or another federal grant or rebate, we will work with you more or less on that timeline. And we just want to make sure you're prepared to meet these deadline requirements. Typically, if you're working just on Mass CEC timeline or don't have that constraint, we see these projects as lasting around 2 years, and we kind of work out with you individually what that would look like. But our hope would be if we can support you with procurement, see when the build times are, build slots, I should say, and then work to see how far out that would be. But our projects are intended to support you through the first 6 months of deployment. So after you've received your buses, we'll help with the training and making sure that everything's working properly, and just kind of be there as a resource through those first 6 months of deployment.
Awesome. We have another question. Can this funding be used for charging infrastructure only, or do you also have to apply for electric school buses to qualify?
So you don't need to use Mass CEC funding for the electric school buses. As I mentioned, you could use the Mass CEC funding just for the infrastructure, but the project does need to involve an electric school bus. So for instance, you would have had to identify another funding source to receive an electric bus, and then we're happy to help with the infrastructure. But we wouldn't have a situation in which there is no electric bus as part of the project and you're just starting the infrastructure. So essentially, our funding does not need to be used for the bus, but the project must include at least one electric bus that you're receiving.
Another question in the chat: are there any examples from Western Mass rural school districts successfully deploying electric buses or progressing with these grants?
That's a good question. Yeah, so as I've mentioned throughout, we're really intending to make sure that there's geographic diversity within our projects. So we do have one project in the Lower Pioneer Valley in Western Massachusetts that's deploying 25 electric school buses. So that's through the first round of the ACT School Bus Deployment Program, and they received Clean School Bus funding as well. So they've yet to receive their buses, but that is an example of a project that's progressing with the grant. And then through advisory services, we are working with Springfield as well, and not quite Western Mass, but Worcester, some more Central Mass. We're trying to identify school districts, in Western Mass for that program, and we're also working with the school district on the Cape. So trying to again get that diversity, geographic diversity.
There's no other current questions, but feel free to keep putting questions in the chat or in the Q&A box.
Yeah, so Lily and I will stay on for a few minutes. I think we can maybe stop the recording, Malia, and then if anyone has any questions that come up, please put them in the chat. We'll be on for a bit more. The recording for now.
We just got one more question really fast. Can we clarify what we mean by type D vans?
Yes, so those are transit vans. They're kind of small box vans. So it's essentially, I know for many school bus fleets that they use buses primarily, but often for special education use a van. And so it's really just to say any of those smaller vans, you're able to use our funding to either purchase an electric van or transition out. So I think the only ones we're seeing are 40 transit vans in Massachusetts. I'm not sure if there are any others, but hopefully that.
To answer the question, the recording to the webinar will be posted on the Mass CEC website, and that should be linked in the chat. We can always link it again for everyone.